YouTube, it's Bethany from Board Batten Design Company. Today we're going to talk about your craft cutting business and specifically how do you price your creations that you've made with your Silhouette or Cricut or etc. machine. Pricing is really a tough thing for a lot of people. It's hard to even know where to start sometimes. So I'm going to give you kind of an overall formula and things that you need to consider because there's actually a little bit more that goes into it than you might think when you're trying to price for a sustainable business, not just trying to be the cheap guy, but trying to price accordingly so that you have a business that can last and that can grow and that can be sustainable. Now, a couple things of note. When you're thinking about labor, there's actually quite a few different labors that have to go into your product. The first labor is obviously the labor that goes into actually making the product. What you want to price that at is not some arbitrary number. It's what it would cost you to pay someone a fair wage to make that for you, okay? Because you want to price now, and then maybe someday along the line, if you got really busy and needed to pay somebody, your price needs to be able to allow for that. And that is going to be a fair calculation of what your labor is. So when you're calculating your labor, always make sure that you don't just pick an arbitrary number or something that you yourself are comfortable with. You pick something that it would cost you to pay somebody else fairly to do the job. And the other caveat is when you're costing out your materials and supplies and things that it costs you, do not use sale prices or discounts and things like that because you don't know for sure that you can always get them. If you price your items based on a sale price, then if you don't get that sale price, then you need to raise your prices, and that's not a good thing. That actually reflects badly on you. So price correctly the first time. Do not accommodate for any discounts or anything like that, okay? Same goes for mileage. We're going to talk about mileage here in a minute. When you are tracking the mileage that goes into your business, whether it's visiting the post office or shopping for blanks if you buy them at an actual store, you need to allow for what it would cost you to go from your home to that place. And don't discount it saying, well, I always go shopping for groceries at the same time, so I'm only going to calculate these miles. Remember, for longevity, you want to calculate what it would cost if that's all you had to do. If you had to pay full price for things, if you had to pay somebody else to do the labor for you, and if you had to just make a trip just for that. So now we talk about calculating your actual cost. Calculating your actual cost is the most important part, and it is the first step of figuring out your price. And this is going to sound kind of complicated, but I want you to don't freak out. It's actually going to be a lot more simple because a lot of this stuff you just determine one time and then you have it because it's going to be your overhead and your marketing time and things like that you just want to add in some to your costs. It doesn't have to be exact, but you do want to allow for that. Now the first thing that you want to allow for is your overhead. So there is cost that goes into it. You're using part of your home for your business, so you need to allow for the part of your mortgage or your rent that goes towards that space that you're using. Also part of your internet cost that goes for your business, as well as any other basic utilities like power and things like that. Not to run equipment specifically, maybe you can do that if you want, but more like the big overhead things that are kind of going to stay the same no matter what, okay? You want to get a kind of a basic idea of how much that is. And when you're trying to figure out how much to allow for each product, the way that I do, especially if you're just starting off, the way that I would recommend it is to pick kind of an arbitrary number of, I want to be selling X amount of products, and then figure out your whole entire overall cost. And then say, well, I could reasonably, in however much time that I have, once I really get going, I could be selling this many products a week. So you figure out how much those utilities and that overhead would be in a week, and then divide it by those number of products that you feel like you could expect to reasonably sell during that time if you are in full swing. And this also includes maintenance and wear and tear on your machine. You want to calculate that in as well. It can be a separate calculation, but I do think that it's not as big of a deal to get this completely accurate. It's just really important to include something for it. Now let's talk about the other things that actually go into making a product. You're not just paying for the actual blank itself. That is not the only cost. You are paying taxes, possibly. You might not be. But if you are going to a store to buy blanks, then you are probably paying taxes. That needs to be paid back for. And then let's talk about mileage, okay? You are probably driving some miles for your business. You might be going to the post office, or you might be driving to the store to get blanks, or you might be driving to meet people. But either way, you need to allow for kind of an average out, again, the mileage that you would expect to attribute to any individual order. And you can figure out what you want to kind of allow. Personally, I go like 45, 50 cents a mile. I can't even remember what the actual tax thing is, but that's a good rule of thumb. But you need to, your business needs to pay for those things. So you need to integrate that into your pricing as well. So that's a cost that you need to allow for. And now one of the biggest things that people forget, now I haven't even talked about the actual cost of the product yet. Your time is your most limited asset in your business. Most of you probably think, I just don't have enough time to get all this stuff done. And part of it is because you are spending a lot of time doing a lot of things in your business that you may not even realize. And your pricing needs to reflect that. Like I said, your business needs to pay for every minute you spend on your business, and it needs to pay for every mile that you drive. Okay? So what kind of time are we talking about? How much on average do you spend, how many minutes on average do you spend communicating with buyers when you're taking orders or answering questions? How much time of your time do you spend meeting up with people if you are actually meeting people in person to deliver or, you know, meet up and get them their products? How much time are you spend packing and shipping and driving to the post office? Okay, those are costs that also need to take into consideration. And the time spent driving to the store and the post office is not the same as the mileage, because the mileage offsets the wear and tear on your vehicle, but the time is what you are paid for your time. And let's talk about the time that you spend setting up and sending PayPal or whatever invoices, the time that you spend ordering blanks, okay? And then just in general, how much time are you spending when you photograph products? And how much time do you spend marketing your products every week? Now, these are a lot of things to consider. I realize that. And so you may want to, especially if you're just getting started, just pick an arbitrary number and add that in every time you price a product. But that has got to be part of your cost. You have to allow for that. You cannot just take the actual cost of literally this blank cost me, you know, $10. It cost me $10 in actual materials, so I'm going to sell it for $30 or whatever. No, you need to accommodate all of your costs, because if your business is going to be sustainable, it needs to make enough money to pay for itself, to pay for all of your time, to pay for the wear and tear on your machine, and to profit enough to grow your business, because profit is how your business grows. Profit is not the same as labor. Okay, so once you have this cost, what you can do, like I said before, is you can kind of calculate one big like monthly number if you want to do it that way, and then divide it up among all the products that you think you could reasonably sell in a month. Or you could do that for the fixed cost stuff, and then the not fixed cost, like, okay, allow for a certain amount of time for packing and shipping a product, and a certain amount of time for communicating with the buyers on the product, and stuff like that, which may vary depending on the product. Some products might be complicated, some might be easy. And so you can make it as complicated as you want. You can make it one big number and do the division, whatever it is that you want, as long as you accommodate and allow for that extra stuff, not just the cost of the blank. So now that you have your actual cost, the bare minimum that you should be pricing your products is cost, including labor, times 2. That is the bare minimum that most people recommend. Personally, I will not sell a product unless I can get cost times 4 for it. And the reason for that is because I'm looking in the future and I'm saying I need to be able to grow, and growth often means wholesale and bulk pricing. And you want to allow for that kind of discounts. The other part of it is that you do not want to bring the value down on your products, but because if you are priced too low, people are going to view your products as cheap and junky. And so you're actually going to make less sales sometimes if you have too low of a price. So I hope that gives you some good information and a good place to start with when you're talking about pricing your Cricut and Silhouette creations. I know it's really tough. It can really vary depending on where you live. It can vary depending on how you sell. And I know it's really a tough issue, but hopefully this gives you a good place to start. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you found this video to be helpful, I would really encourage you to subscribe to my channel. This is all I focus on, is the craft cutting business on my channel here. So if that's your thing, I really would encourage you to stick around and subscribe and see what other videos I've got coming for you. And share this video with anybody that you feel it could be helpful for. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.